Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to welcome you today to this conversation with Ulay. My name is Cathérine. I'm from Zürich, from Kunsthaus Zürich, and I'm very pleased to have this unique occasion to speak with Ulay in this beautiful context of Art Basel. So the conversation will be structured like approximately half an hour we'll discuss, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, together. And of course, you are cordially invited, the audience is cordially invited to speak with us, with Ulay. And so keep your questions ready, and there will be a microphone. It's also important to know that this conversation, I think, is recorded, so yeah, you will be recorded as well. Okay. I will not give an introduction to Ulay's biography, because that's what we will speak about now. I forgot something else. If you don't want to ask your questions in English, you can do it, of course, in your native language, with preferably German or French. I could then try to. I will try to translate. Ulay understands also at least. How many languages do you speak? I don't know. At least German and Dutch and so on.
Oh, actually, one language, and the other two are more idiosyncratic pidgin languages. But I get away with 3 or 4 languages.
Okay, great. And at the very end, after the conversation, there will be the occasion to speak face to face with Ulay, because there is a book signing from a brand new book, over 530 pages, sort of monography, a wonderful book that was sent to me in preparation of this talk, and it's really, it's here, a lot of stickers in it, and you can go to this book signing if you want and speak with Ulay bilaterally if you want. It will be at the at Stampa, the bookshop right across the street. So we start with our conversation, and I wanted to ask you very simply, what brought you to the arts in general and initiated you to performance in specific? Later on, then also the photographic medium. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, dear Cathérine, being here with me. Okay, to start by the beginning. Well, I was born during the Second World War in Germany in 1943, and my upbringing during the war and post-war Germany was, of course, not a rose garden, and I believe it had a tremendous influence on my later development to adulthood, like were Sigmar Polke and Kiefer, the same generation who had this misfortune to be born in this particular geopolitical moment. Well, another disaster which happened to me personally is my father died when I was 14, and my mother disappeared when I was 15, and I had no family left, no brothers, no sisters, no uncles or other relatives, so I was on my own with the age of 15. Now, when I was 15, I really was still a child. Today, kids of 15 are more like punks. So I had sort of a misfortune, family, social emotion, social fabric, direct social fabric, which is one of the most important things for children to grow up in or with. Then I managed in Germany to do one and the other thing. Of course, for my generation, there were 2 suggestions. One is either become a doctor or become an engineer. I chose for engineer. And that wasn't satisfying. I studied, but it wasn't satisfying at all. And eventually, at the age of 25, I met, amongst others, Jürgen Klauke, a German artist. We became very good friends. Klauke was studying at the academy in Cologne, and I enrolled at the academy in Cologne while I was living already in Amsterdam. I left Germany in 1968. So I moved back and forth, Amsterdam, Cologne, and Klauke, Cologne, Amsterdam. We became good friends. And I tried to study photography at the academy, but there was no professor or a faculty for photography at all. So I ended up, of course, in free graphics or painting. And with the slight dilemma that I was very advanced already in photographic techniques, that means analog photography, mechanical, chemical, and optical. So I ended up in teaching other students who were actually studying painting and free graphics about photography. And after a year and a half, my professor, Professor Will, who was a professor for painting, asked me kindly to come in his atelier for a serious talk. Well, I went to him, and he said, you know, Ulay, I think it's better you leave the academy before it spoils your good character. And I said, wow, that's a strange suggestion. And you know, as a student, I cling really to the social environments of other kommilitones. And that was the hard one. I could have left the academy because I couldn't study photography at all, anyhow. So I did leave, and I was thrown back on the street and living like a gypsy. And the first 5 years from Cathérine, if I make it too long, just break it, please. The next 5 years, from about 69 to 75, I got very much involved in writing aphorisms. This is a form of poetry. Till the moment, 69, 70, 71, while writing aphorisms, I also discovered Polaroid instant photography. I was fascinated. I started taking Polaroid photographs. I pointed the camera at me and was acting in front of the camera with what I call intimate action or intimate performances for the camera. Then I put the Polaroid images in my typewriter and would hammer aphorisms over the Polaroid images. So I got in this dubio whether writing or image making. Image was the winner because writing was more an intellectual, rational exercise, while image making more the emotional one, of course. So from there on, I worked my way with thousands of Polaroid photographs, photographing myself in quest for my identity. Now, this is the key in my early work. Because, as I said, I lost my father with 15 and my mother with 14, my mother with 15. I had no really answers to my identity, to my ancestors, to my relatives, etc., etc. So I felt very strongly to investigate about and in my personal identity, which I did for about 5 years. And but that moved me into the art making by means of photography and writing. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you. This actually was is a subject matter I wanted to talk with you about. Essentially, the questioning of the single identity. There is a sentence and a body of work you coined with, or you entitled with, "Der Abschied einer einzigen Person," the farewell of a single person or personality. And I was wondering, I mean, the duality and questioning of critical questioning of the impossibility of having either a female identity or masculine or male identity. that's what I wanted to ask you a little bit about this. If you could develop in this dialectic situation. And there is another very famous image of your, like, half of the body or half of the face at least being elegant woman with makeup, perfect, beautiful skin, and I think, was it the left part or the right part? Well, anyways.
Well, my woman was left.
Okay. If we could talk a little bit more in depth about this, and also bring it into the present. What is your observation of this whole discussion about identity, and especially sexual identity? What did you observe critically in the past 30 years? Because this is a subject matter that lost a little bit of maybe its attractiveness and in the 90s, and now is very much a big topic again. So if we could talk about that.
Well, I was an avant-gardist, I guess. Well, I got into this, that was part of the identity investigation, also, to checking out in how far I have female ambitions or an anima, like the female soul, as opposed to the animus. And I have a very big anima, I must say, and I wanted to play out my anima and play with it, so I was gender crossing and dressing as transvestite, not only for the Polaroid, the auto Polaroid sessions, but I also walked in society as transvestite. And well, at one stage I was, spending time with transvestites and transsexuals. They had special clubs and areas where most were, of course, doing it for money. That I never did. I didn't went so far. I didn't want to misuse my woman in that respect. But it was a very interesting thing, and I really did a lot of effort trying to understand or to get into the consciousness of a woman. Well, as you know, photography always stays on the periphery of things. So after some time, having checked myself out as a man and woman, piercing, tattoo, transplantation, all this, self-mutilation things, because I want to go under my skin, because photography remains at the surface of things. Then at one stage I gave it up. But as you know, I have been collaborating with women, several women. I think 1, 2, 3. The last collaboration was, of course, MA. And all 3 women were actually fascinated about my attempt to be a woman or look like a woman, meaning by I must have a good understanding for women. And I think it was a sort of a sympathetic invitation for women to eventually collaborate with me. Yeah. Now, you made a big leap about the question about gender, etc., now into the 90s and later. I think it became a little fashionable. I mean, political and fashionable. I think a fantastic thing what art and the art context has offered from the 70s on was that women in art made the most rapid progress, being recognized, equalized, and getting positions. There is no other enterprise in the world, neither economically, financially, socially, where women have made such a leap into respected positions, as I said, equality and good positions, like you have yourself a great position. And that had to do with female artists in the 70s who were so tough, feminist artists in the 70s. They were so tough, bouncing against the male hierarchy in art. I have witnessed that many times. And these women were so tough, they wouldn't shake hands with me, being a man. Really, I mean, you know, Ulrike Rosenbach, Cathérine Severding, Wally Expo, they really were tough. But they have set something in motion remarkable, with the result, I believe, that those female artists in history have two qualities. They have an aesthetic quality for being artists, and they have a political quality. And I think, yeah, great people in the 20th century.
Speaking about politics, history, the influence of art as being both aesthetic and political. I wanted to speak with you about this action. I don't know, do you say action or performance? Where you said there is something criminal in arts. Where you, for people who don't know this action or performance?
Action.
Action, okay. I think it was in 76 or 2? Or, yeah.
76.
76, okay. You went to the Neue Nationalgalerie and took off the wall, the painting, the poor poet, the arme Poet from Karl Spitzweg, and yeah, you had to flee because, I mean, it's a museum and etc. But the whole point about it is that it is that you took it off and brought it to another neighborhood, to a family that kept anonymous, but with a migrant background. I think it is a Turkish family.
Okay.
And this event or this action was highly mediatized. As a linksradikaler Irre took off, stole our most important painting, far left-wing radical crazy man, took off our one of the most important paintings of our most cherished painter, Karl Spitzweg. And this component of the mediatization is also, I guess, you anticipated this to a certain degree, of course, and criticizes the political stagnation that somehow in the art history took place, since this Karl Spitzweg was at the same time still a very cherished painter in the 70s, I guess, from a large public, but people tend to forget that it used to be one of the most, I guess, cherished painters from Adolf Hitler. And this was the very same time, I guess, that RAF was active, the second wave RAF was active, criticizing that the entnazification didn't really worked. And it's latently and also the new racism coming on and so on and so on. And I wanted to ask you, like, what also happened as when you one part that is less discussed is what happened with this family, how they received this painting and your action. Yeah, I would love to hear your comments on this.
Well, it is a long story, and yes, it was a demonstrative action for which I have decided to do in 1976 during a stay in Berlin. I visited the new National Gallery and did not expect to see in the new National Gallery a section with German Biedermeier romantic art. Amongst those works exhibited were a couple of works by Karl Spitzweg. The Poor Poet was a painting where I grew up with. I mean, I think in my school book from lower school, there was one color reproduction in it, and it was Karl Spitzweg, The Poor Poet. Well, you know, at the time, I was very much against institutionalization. At the time, discovering in Berlin Kreuzberg it was, which was really a Turkish ghetto. At the same time, in Berlin Kreuzberg was Kunsthaus Bethanien, where the ateliers, the studios from DAAD, Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, and they wrote in their statute that it is an incredibly interesting area with these Gastarbeiters, etc., etc., etc. And I found the contrast a little bit too high. And I was actually irritated by all of it. And by the Spitzweg, and by the Turkish Gastarbeiters who were treated and discriminated like those. And then there is throning the DAD with mostly foreign artists, mostly Americans at the time. They had their grants. And I don't know, I got irritated. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to express what I'm irritated about. Well, I made a big reproduction of the actual painting. The painting is small like this, but I made a huge photographic reproduction. And first, I blocked the main entrance of the academy, the art academy in Berlin, then called HDK. Then I went to the new National Gallery, and I stole the painting. I had to have a tool to cut the wires. And the wires were connected to sensors, of course, so the moment you touch them, the alarm goes in and out. I grabbed the painting under my arm. I had to rush up 2 stairs, cross this gigantic hall, and get out of the emergency exits because they're not locked. They have 2 revolving entrances, the main entrance, but they were blocked. When the alarm goes up, they are blocked. But I had studied the situation pretty careful. So I ran away, I got in my truck and drove the direction Berlin Kreuzberg. The danger really was 2. RAF or Baader-Meinhof were active in Berlin. Taxi drivers, cab drivers, for fun, listened the whole day to the police station radio. And they would block the roads. If they hear something like this and they get a signal about what car is about to be found, they will block the roads. So that was my worries. But then I drove to Berlin Kreuzberg. The car I had at the time, a very old van, mud black painted, was the only one around. I left behind and I kept running with the painting. Then to Kunsthaus Bethanien, I put a color poster of Karl Spitzweg's painting, The Poor Poet, on the door of Berlinische Galerie. And then I ran in direction Marienstraße, where the Turkish foreign worker family was living. And I had visited the family before. And I have simply said, we are shooting a documentary film. Would it be possible to use your environment? We will hang for a short while a painting on the wall. We film it, and that's about it. They said, okay. So I came in there, and I had no hammer and nail with me. I had to detach an awful Baroque kind of a color reproduction painting, and I hang it off and hang Karl Spitzweg's Poor Poet on the wall. They didn't like it at all. They said, we don't like that, we want our old one back. But we filmed the whole thing. It was all on film. Then I called the new National Gallery, but I called the police on the phone because when things happen like this, they immediately, the Professor Honisch, the director, loses all authorities, the police takes it over. And I said, I have taken the painting, I'm there, and can you please come and look at the painting in the environment and certify me that it's not damaged, because I'm not a Kunstzersteuer or, an art destructor, I'm a thief. And that took about an hour before first the anti-terror police secured the whole block. And then a grey Mercedes came with 2 gentlemen. One was Professor Dieter Honisch, and the other one was somebody else. The other one was from the civilian police. I showed the painting, he certified me quick that it is not damaged. I took the consequences. I was arrested, standing feet. I got in the car, we drove back to the new National Gallery, and I was put in prison for 24 hours. By German law, they can put you in prison for 24 hours without any meeting any judge. And of course, one of the questions was very important. You were mentioning what happened to the Turkish foreign worker family. I have told them that I have been entering by surprise, that they have nothing to do with it, etc., and nothing ever happened. They were protected, so they were not prosecuted or for any reasons. The action was like a bomb. First, the popular media, the boulevard press would say, left radical robbed our most beautiful painting, associating this with the terror groups who maybe want to blackmail institutions or whoever to get money, to buy weapons or whatever. I'm not a left radical. At the time, I was pretty leftist, but not a militant or a terrorist. I rather would call myself at the time a constructive anarchist. But anyhow, so this particular action was stirring up incredible much press writing, first in the boulevard press, then in feuilletons, in better papers, then in art publications, and etc., etc. And till today, it was discussed for a long time. And I do not regret anything. I think I have set something in motion. You know, art is about setting something in motion, really. Art delivers unique sensations. And if it is good, they set something in motion, either intellectual or emotional or psychological. Well, this action was one of my best I have done. Never to commercialize, of course. But yeah, there is a criminal touch to art, it was called.
So this back and forth between the self-examination in your performances and then more and more performance related to Polaroid series and other kinds of photographic techniques. And this back and forth also with this, like, let's say more introspective or self-reflecting on the one hand, and on the other hand, the extroverted, let's say, body of work, or also attraction to this kind of mindset and analysis, got more, as far as I learned about your work in beforehand of preparation of this talk. I observed that in the past, after, I would say, you have to correct me, right? But I would say especially in the 90s and after 2000, your own person is not so much anymore in the works, but gets substituted by metaphors. Like, for example, the glass of water, and so on. And also, on the other hand, you worked more and more with groups of people, or observe them for a long period of time, and so on and so on. Can you explain that? Is this the course of history, or did there some? What happened? I mean.
Well, what actually happened is what more or less happened to anybody. You get a year older. I'm getting 72 this year, and I cannot do any more these radical performances. And I'm a bad actor. That's why I became a performance artist. And the most performances are not rehearsed, of course. And you do it only once, especially the outdoor aggressive performances or self-mutilating performances. You cannot rehearse, and you don't do it often. Then I would say it becomes pathologic. But I did recently perform in January this year at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam. After maybe 15 years, I have not done performance. I enjoyed it tremendously. But it was also a very different performance than what I have done in the 70s and 80s, for example. I was looking at one stage for a substitute about body and performance, etc., etc. And I got aware of the fact that our body consists of about 70% of water, and mind you, our brains 90%. So we are really water creatures in a way. And the surface of our planet Earth, the water planet Earth, is covered mostly by water. And I thought, well, water could maybe be a nice substitute to replace body. It was a good attempt, and I got away with it for some time. And I did projects with others in several areas in the world, and one of them was Israel and the West Bank with Palestinians. Because water is very explosive. Water is politicizes at once. And I'm not a polit artist, really. I was aware that, the whole issue of water is highly, highly explosive. So I worked for 1 month in Israel and 1 month on the West Bank. And with young Israeli and Palestinian artists together, we did seminars, we did exhibitions, we made video productions, photo productions, etc., etc. It was supported by Arte and Goethe Institute in Ramallah and by the Willy Brandt Center in Jerusalem. And my big wish was to bring them together. That was the most difficult thing. When I worked in the West Bank, the collaboration was wonderful. When I worked in Israel, the collaboration was wonderful. But bringing them together in one and the same moment for exhibition, symposium, etc., that was not easy, but eventually we succeeded. We brought Israelis and Palestinians together at the Goethe Institute in Ramallah, and then we brought them together at the Willy Brandt Center in Jerusalem. I was touring around Patagonia for a long time, focusing on clouds, water, glaciers and icebergs. And eventually we came up with a website which is called earthwatercatalog.net. You can check it. We managed to do some interesting things, but then at one stage I was into traveling again, and like here now, and I wasn't too active with the website. We will revitalize it by the end of this year. The website was a filtered site. Actually, only by personal invitation you could have access to the site and upload either video, photographs, you could blog, etc., etc. So it was too much filtered, so the flow was hindered. And when we reopen it and revitalize it now, we will certainly also approach water activists, which are extremely important in those days. And it will become more a rush flow concerned about sweet water, not salt water, sweet water. And it will have also a political tint, and it will show and host water actionists who are, amongst others, acting against privatization of water. The most important one happened to be in Switzerland. So that was the water issue. But in the meanwhile, I also do a lot of lectures, workshops, seminars, and getting my new works. I started with new works. Yeah.
But the positive thing about the water issue is that water is the youngest human right? It, through a civil society, European civil society movement, I think it came into the Human Rights Declaration as the youngest right in the Declaration of the UN. So this is, you said it's explosive, but at least there is now, through this self-organization of activists and probably also through the power of social media, because otherwise this would have been more difficult to organize that a big amount of people to sign this petition. So do you, because you work on this field for several years now, do you feel that the civil European civil how do you say civil right not civil rights, civil society, Bürgergesellschaftsbewegung, that this gives new boost in also a changing of a democratic notion and activity, or is this, or am I too optimistic?
I do like the initiative and the promise by the UN or the World Bank or the World Health Organization. They have since quite some time the water issue on top of their millennium agenda. But you see, without question, water, access to clean, safe drinking water is and should be our birthright, right? In how much water is wasted and polluted and not secure. We go to certain areas in Africa and in Asia. It's not only the water, but it's also sanitary facilities. It is disastrous, absolute disastrous. I believe right now every second a child dies on a waterborne disease. It is disastrous. And, you know, I'm skeptical with these kind of promises because corporates and multinationals are very unethical. They're very radical. They are very powerful. And, you know, the whole issue about sustainability also, I'm very skeptical with it. Because in the 70s is what happiness, it was freedom, and it was this, and what happened, things become only worse. So, you know, these kind of credos I'm not very fond of, but I think that, you know, the problem can be very easy solved. The biggest problem is population explosion, of course. The resources, they're getting less and less. Reasonable, safe, good distributed resources getting less and less. This is inherent to the population growth on the planet in large. I think the problem is very simple resolved. If one cares for one each other, no? If each one cares for one each other, I think the problem would be solved much easier than going via the incredible political, administrational kind of organizations, you know. Well, sometimes I like to simplify things, you see.
So, time is running, I see. I have a little clock here, and I was wondering if we eventually would open the discussion to the public now. Are there any questions in the audience?
We have a spare mic. Oh yeah, he's running around with a spare mic.
There's a spare mic here. No questions?
Okay.
No, I have more.
Okay, good. I don't know if you have the time.
Okay, so, well, anytime, raise your hand if you have a question. I have more questions, at least one or two more. I wanted to ask you a little bit if you could elaborate on the different photo techniques you use, which are very sophisticated. Some others feel rather abstract. There's the photogram we know from, especially from Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and Bauhaus time, but also the after images and the large polograms where often the body is depicted on it from yourself or other people. And of course, we already spoke about the Polaroids, but the Polaroids is also a technique that faced weird and also sad changes, let's say. Now I think it experiences a revival, the Polaroid, because the material is produced again by Kodak. I don't know which. No, completely wrong. Okay.
Well, I love the subject, of course, because I'm really by ambition and by experience and by knowledge in photography. I have done many experiments with analog photography. I'm not digital oriented because I'm digital dyslexic. You know, photography is per definition an after image. Even an instant photograph like Polaroid, or today the remake of Polaroid, which is called Impossible, it's questionable, a good product or not. But there is Fuji producing instant photography, which is reasonably good. But it always needs 90 seconds or 60 seconds to develop to a recognizable image. Even the digital image is still an after image. You know, you take it now and then you look at it. There is a fraction of a second or a little more in between. I think the only integral image making was video. Video was integral one-to-one. You know, you had to point the camera at something and immediately you could see on the monitor, see and record. I think video was the first integral media. But photography, yes, I have experimented with analog photography, and whatever works I intended to produce, I most likely would change technique, either for the photography as such or for printmaking, etc., etc. And then, of course, I had a unique access to Polaroid products. I was in 70 to 72 a Polaroid consultant photographer, touring around the world, testing cameras and films, and that gave me tremendous access to the material. And I had access to the big Polaroids. That means 24-inch Polaroids. They're about 70 centimeter by 50 centimeter. And to this unique camera in Boston, USA, for the museum-size camera, which makes images in 90 seconds, full color images, 2.40 m by 1.12 m, and they are just immaculate. I think I still would call it the Rolls-Royce of photography. Polaroid, as such, is a legend in the history of photography. I think Polaroid would now celebrate about 70 years of history within the little more than 200 years of photography history. I did a lot of experiments, and I did eventually, you mentioned polograms, not photograms, we know what photograms are, but polograms, where I work inside this big camera for the 240 by 112 centimeter. The camera is 3 by 4 meters, and there are 2 technicians inside in black with infrared spectacles to do the technique. I work directly on the negative and use little torch lights to expose the negative and put body parts of mine on it, and so on. Yes, I have if you look at the book, and I hope some of you, it would be a little bit unrealistic to say all of you get the book, but you know, there is a wide variety of illustrations and images covering about all I have done within 45 years with photography. One very important thing, and I hope I don't bother you with that. At one stage, I learned about a wonderful essay written by Art Basel. Art Basel, Frenchman, who was actually a very important film critic, mainly for the period of Nouvelle Vague. But Art Basel wrote this amazing, beautiful essay, which is called The Ontological in the Photographic Image. When I read this, coming from performance, performative photography, performance, and I read this, then I had a very big wish to picture any object or subject in life size, in original size. So the ontological he refers to has to do with that the actual object or subject transferred onto photographic media has to be one-to-one. In my case, of course, the big wish was, okay, the human body, my body, for example. And I managed with photograms and polograms and the large-size Polaroid images to be pictured in life size, in real size and time. That was something very important for my later performative photographic kind of an interest, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess this is an ongoing question with performance art, is what what is left at the end? Is it only, in quote marks, only the documentation of it, or or is it a relict, some objects of sculptural kind, or is it, or does the event of performance marry, so to say, with its remain, which is in that case you mentioned the polagram, that becomes integral part of the performative act, so to say, right?
Well, it depends on the author, the artist, whether he or she is doing a performance and it will be documented, to make use of the documentation and later on authorizes as being an autonomous work of art, signing it, up to the author. Creating a photographic image for the purpose of the photographic image, it's a different story. That's not a documentation of something that is just done as an autonomous work of art, being by photographic means. Performance, of course, is the body is the medium par excellence. Absolutely. When doing performance, it is real time. I used to call it flirtatious. It is a choreographed existence, or it is edited live. But what happened is, and 2 days ago I had a talk for the I never read radio, the online radio, and at the end of the interview, we were mentioned, real TV shows. What is it called? Reality shows. Yeah. That started, of course, with Big Brother in Holland, with Jan de Mol, and I had quite some talks with these people back in the 1999 about it. They had cameras for 24 hours running in several rooms, indoors or outdoors. But of course, there are breaks. There is an editing director who is choosing this image from there, and then he goes over to there are always breaks, and most likely, before putting it on TV, in this time, talking about 99, there was no 24-hour TV. Maybe CNN, but not, the Dutch stations. So there have been editing the real life thing. In performance, it's not possible, and that's what I like about performance. You do it, it's continuous from the beginning till the end. Nothing is edited or montaged or whatever, or cut or shifted. To me personally, performance is the ultimate medium, absolutely. And I do think I go back to performance. Usually when people ask me, when do you do performance again, I keep saying I'm not old enough. Why? Because I like to show in performance, amongst other things, in age and inability. Usually performers, they show their best. They are fit, they do this and this and this, but I like to show inability and age, like Merce Cunningham did pretty much. I continue with photography, I continue with performance, and it's the marriage of my life, photography, performance, photography. And you can expect much to come.
I have a question. Yes, I wondered what happened with the writing, and where do you find hope? Thank you.
You wonder what happened to my writing, my early writing, the aphorisms. I have them kept in very good condition, and sooner or later I would really love them to be exhibited, together with a couple of photographic works, amongst them in 1976 I asked to make myself a tattoo on my left arm, and the text was Generation Ultima Ration. A couple of weeks later, I went to the first practicing cosmetic surgeon, and asked them to cut it out, and I like to preserve it. So we did. He agreed. I didn't have to pay. He found it a bit weird. I took Polaroid photographs from the process, and I preserved the skin first in formalin, And then later on I air dried it, and the piece of skin is like this big. It's still readable. The tattoo text is still readable. And there are about 8 Polaroid images from the whole procedure of cutting out a piece and transferring other piece of skin. I like to show this with the aphorism together, because only recently I have a gigantic archive, and I'm not very fond of going too much through all times, you know. But only very recently I did the effort to read through the aphorisms again, and they're also typographically very interesting. And actually what I found is that I did write between 1969 and 1973-74 actually the whole partiture for anything else I did later on. So that's what makes it very interesting. And then you had one last word. Was that hope? Sure. Hope for me personally, hope for you, hope for us, all of us.
Yes, where do you find your hope?
Well, my hope is actually, it's not a future thing. Being here, having to do something, talking with Cathérine, talking to you, being engaged in things, making myself useful, that keeps me going, and that generates hope by itself. I wouldn't put hope in the into the future, because the future comes never. We know that. The future never comes. But hope is something what you generate instantaneously, right here, right now, wherever. You know, if you feel good, hope comes by itself. I think so. In my case, definitely. Yeah.
This is a very beautiful statement for the end of this discussion. Discussions to be followed. I'm sure Ulay will soon, in other contexts, talk to that much interested audience as you were. Yeah, thanks again, and have a nice Sunday, and book signing if you are interested in this wonderful book.
There's another thing which gives me hope. Signing the book. Selling the book, actually. Thank you very much, all of you.